You're good. I can say they play well all night.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by Lord Timepieces. Use the promo code LOFANTASY for 10% off and free shipping. My name is Josh Lloyd and you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball, on Instagram at redrock_bball, on Facebook at facebook.com/redrockbasketball, and if you want to support the show, of course, over on Patreon at patreon.com/redrock_bball, where it costs $3 a month to become a supporter of this show. We're going to be looking at Thursday's action. Nothing much in terms of close games, but definitely a little bit of stuff to talk about, and then previewing Friday's action. So
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. And just a quick programming note. There is one game on Saturday, but what I will be doing for Saturday's show is previewing the one game on Saturday and the 3 games for Sunday, because there will be 2-day contests on FanDuel and DraftKings, and it will include all 4 of those games. So we won't do a Sunday show, but Saturday's show will do the 1 game on Saturday and the 3 games on Sunday. So be aware of that. There'll be a show. This is obviously Friday's show. There'll be a Saturday show, and there will be no Sunday show at this stage. So just be aware of that. But Saturday's one will cover all 3 of Sunday's action. So make sure you have subscribed to the podcast, and then you will never miss an episode. So you don't need my schedule updates, because it will just automatically come into your podcast feed. And you can check me out on Twitter to see when new episodes get released as well. Let's talk perfect DFS lineups from Thursday's action on FanDuel. It was Johnny Wall who had 44.2. Steph Curry had 39.3. Klay Thompson went for 32. Rocket Rodney Hood, he made his way into the perfect lineup despite having just 14.6 points. It was a low-scoring affair on FanDuel. Otto Porter had 36.6, and Bojan Bogdanovic, fueled by the Kelly Oubre ejection, had 34 points. Draymond had 44.4, and Dave West had 16.4. So we had 2 blokes in the perfect lineup at under 17 points with West and Rocket. Marcin Gortat had 34.2, and that was a grand total of 295.7, and that cost the full $60,000. On DraftKings, it was the return of the Mac, with Shelvin having 23.75, Bojan Bogdanovic having 38, KD with 49, Draymond with 49.25, Gortat 38, Klay with 33.75, Gordo Hayward with 46.5, and Rudy Gobert with 41. So all that talk I had with, if you're going to stack games, look to stack the Boston-Washington one. It's a tighter spread. It's a larger total. That perfect lineup on DraftKings consisted of 2 players from that game, Bogdanovic and Gortat. We had Mac, Durant, Green, Thompson, Hayward, Gobert all come from the Golden State Utah game, which is a little bit extraordinary on there. John Tiet chimes in and says, I love your Twitter banter today with someone about Kelly Olynyk. John, if you love that, I know a little bit to say about Kelly Olynyk today. I'm pretty sure we'll get to that in just a minute or two. We'll talk some Kelly Olynyk, but for now, it's time to welcome back an old sponsor to the podcast, and that is the wonderful folks at Lord Timepieces. As you know, Mother's Day is just around the corner, so what better way to show your mum that you appreciate her than by getting her a very, very fashionable, and for you, very affordable watch from the guys over at Lord Timepieces. These are really reasonable prices. It's a London-based company. Shipping is free, and shipping is free worldwide, and that's awesome for you guys who don't live in the States, who want to take advantage of some of the sponsorship offers that my sponsors do provide. Lord Timepieces will help you with that. I've got a watch from them. It's absolutely fantastic. I haven't worn a watch in, 15 years, but I really love this Lord Timepieces watch that I've got. Really, so now when I need to look up and look like I'm a I'm a professional, not a bummy slob who sits at home in his shorts on the couch all day. I've got something to make me look a little bit classy, and that's what the guys at Lord Timepieces help me out with. It's a new watch brand. They haven't been around all that long, but they've definitely sold a ton of watches. Over 100,000 watches sold so far. The watches start at a very affordable $70 with free worldwide shipping. You can't get a better deal than that. And as I said, getting your mum a watch for Mother's Day is one of the better gifts that you can do. At any sort of department store, you'd be looking at spending $400 to $500 on a nice watch, but the guys at Lord Timepieces, they cut out that middleman and they give you the best price possible on these watches. Classic design, quality construction, and styled minimalism. That is the way of Lord Timepieces. And if you go and use my promo code, you get 10% off with that free shipping. So go to lordtimepieces.com and use the promo code LOFantasy to get yourself that watch, 10% discount and free shipping. Go and do that, lordtimepieces.com with the promo code LOFantasy. Let's talk games. Let's talk Boston and Washington. The Celtics made that change to their starting lineup. We assumed there would be a change and Amir Johnson would be out. We saw in the second half of Game 2 they went with Marcus Smart and used an 8-man rotation. And to me, you know what? That made sense. Let's run an 8-man rotation. Let's use our 8 good players and play them the majority of the minutes. But no, Brad Stevens is smarter than that. He went back to Gerald Green. Didn't work at all. Now, someone did tweet at me today, oh, they've got a 4-0 record when Gerald Green starts. That's cool. Doesn't mean it's the right decision. They also won game 2 when Gerald Green was a DNP CD. So does that make him shit? Or does it make him great that they were 4-0? It doesn't matter. They were negative 8.8 points per 100 possessions in the playoffs with Green. That's his on-off number. So they were 9 points per 100 possessions better with him on the bench than he was starting. He was not the factor that they won those games. They went back to him. He struggled. They got down to a huge deficit once again early on and ended up losing the game. They weren't able to come back for the third consecutive game. I still believe that they should be starting either Jaylen Brown in that spot or just go with Marcus Smart there and run your bench lineup of Olynyk, your Repko, and not your Repko, Rozier, Olynyk, and Jaylen Brown as your bench unit with Marcus Smart starting, or switch Smart for Brown. You can throw your Repko in there if you want, but you really only need to use 8 guys. Now, they used everybody in this game because it was a decidedly large smashing, so don't get too fooled by looking at the box scores here. Isaiah Thomas struggled. He had more dental work done in the halftime break and subsequently was not able to start the second half. He came back out about a minute after that, and weirdly enough, it appeared that when he came back out, he had to explain to Brad Stevens why he wasn't there. So my brain just automatically goes, surely someone said, Brad, Isaiah's going to have some work on his teeth, mate. He's not going to be there to start the first half or start the second half, rather than Thomas have to come out, oh, sorry, Brad, I was just getting some work done on my teeth, mate. That's why I wasn't there. And Brad's going, oh, cool, that makes sense. It didn't, maybe that wasn't what he was explaining. It bloody looked like that's what he was explaining, and he did have that dental work done at halftime. It didn't matter. This game was a smashing. There is really nothing to take out of it in terms of how the rotations work. I think that Green will probably start again in Game 4. I 100% don't agree with it, but I think that's what will go down. Only 3 Celtics scored in double figures. 13 points for Isaiah, 14 for Jay Crowder, and 16 for Al Horford, whose playoffs have been a real success after those first 2 poor games that he put in against Chicago. He has been really good since then. Marcus Smart had a 111 in his 25 minutes. Terry Rozier was ejected, and he wasn't the only one. Along with Brandon Jennings and, of course, Kelly Oubre, 3 players were ejected from this game. In total, Rozier and Jennings ejected at the same time from going back and forth at each other and getting double text twice, and they got themselves ejected. So don't look at this and go, man, I used Terry Rozier, he was shit. Yeah, he was, because he got ejected. He would have played more minutes than this. This whole thing was a complete screw-up. James Young played 10 minutes, so that's pretty much all you need to know. All you need to know about this game from a Boston point of view. Ryan O'Neill says, have you put your order in for Alonzo's shoes yet? Cheap as chips. I don't mind how they look. I don't mind the Aloe, or so the Zo 2s that Lonzo Ball is putting out. $495 seems a little on the expensive side. And I don't reckon as you're trying to break into the marketplace, that's probably the price point to go for. But I'm not in marketing. What do I know? Just that LeVar Ball, everything. And people say, oh, yeah, but people are talking about him. Cool. we're talking about him and we're giving him shit, and we're saying as if we're paying $500 for a pair of those shoes. That's talking about him, and no one's buying it. Talk is fine, but unless it translates into sales, what's it going to do? I find it weird that you would come in and price an entry level shoe or an entry into the market at that higher price when you've got no backup, nothing behind you to come out at that sort of price. But just in general, the shoes, I thought they looked alright. I didn't have any problem with how they looked. Thought they looked totally good, which, as someone who puts out words for a living, is probably not the most articulate way of putting that. Let's talk about Kelly Olynyk. He and I wanted to get this because he played 12 minutes. He was terrible. 1 point, 1 rebound, and 1 assist. He had a lot of mates on the Celtics in being terrible though. But I tell you what bothers me. I'm an unabashed Kelly Olynyk fan. You know that. I have no problem with him wearing a man bun. People seem to get disappointed. People hate that. Whatever. That's fine. I have many times said that Kelly Olynyk has a top 5 worst, shittest haircut in the NBA before he went to the man bun, when he had that, cut off straight at the end, shoulder length, bob bullshit, whatever it had going on. Top 5 worst haircut in the NBA, probably top 2. That's how bad it was. But people, I tell you what really shits me about the discussion on Kelly Olynyk, about him being a dirty player. I hate that narrative. It goes to Matthew Dellavedova too, and it's just
wrong.
Thanks, Don. It is Donald. It's wrong. And same with Kelly Olynyk. I don't believe that he is a dirty player. As I'm like, oh, what about the Kevin Love thing? Yeah, as if he was going, what I'm going to do here? The rebound's coming out. I'm going to intentionally pull his arm out of the socket. That's what I'll do. You know what? He did the wrong thing. He committed a foul by grabbing his arm. No one can debate that. Kelly can't debate that. So I wasn't holding him. No, you were holding him. You committed a foul. You did the wrong thing. Same as someone going up to block a shot and hitting someone's arm. You know what? Hit his arm. Cool. He wasn't going out there and going, split second, quick, grab his arm, yank, jiu-jitsu hold, let's pull it out of the socket, done. Cool, injury's done, he's out of the playoffs. Yes, that is exactly what I was trying to do. No, you can't tell me that. That is not dirty. It is a load of absolute shit. And then someone else threw at me, but did you see, in game 2 when he undercut John Wall's leg so he'd fall? Olynyk had the ball. It went out of his hands, and as he was moving forward, as Wall was going up to block, Wall landed on him. You think that Olynyk, as he was fumbling the ball going to grab it, he went, I'm going to make a detour here. Not detour, shout out to Star Wars Day. I'm going to make a detour here and just barrel into John Wall's knees so I can take him out as he's flying in the air. If it had been the other way around and Wall had been dribbling and Olynyk had gone up to block and then landed on top of John Wall, Olynyk's a dirty player. See what he did to Wall? Landed on his back, tried to take him out, tried to flatten him. Come on. He did not intentionally injure Kevin Love. He intentionally grabbed his arm. No doubt about that. Did not intentionally injure him, and he did not take out John Wall's knees. And I'm not related to Kelly Olynyk. I just think it's absolute bullshit, the discussion of him being a dirty player. Really, really not how I feel about Kelly at all. And it's just an infuriating thing to me. Now, this actual confrontation, Olynyk set a screen. It was a hard screen. Yes, he moved a little bit. You know who does that? Every single player in the entire NBA. Oh, Kelly, yeah, of course he did. Of course he set a screen that was illegal. Cool. He got pinged for it. He got pinged for the offensive foul. So Kelly Oubre charges him and pushes him down. Now, I'm not all about praise for Kelly Olynyk, or as the guy in Boston called him sitting behind, or in Washington called him sitting behind the microphone, Olynyk, you're a bum. Olynyk, you're a bum. How about you learn how to speak, mate? But Kelly Olynyk, not Oubre. Kelly Oubre is charging at you, mate. Don't go down like a sack of shit like you're trying to take a charge. It just looks weak as piss. Stand up to the bloke. Chest him back. If someone's running into you, brace yourself, push forward. Don't stand there and topple like the Eiffel Tower. Not that that's ever toppled. Leaning Tower of Pisa, maybe that's the word I'm trying to go for. Don't do that. That was a terrible flop, and it made it look bad. Not for Oubre, it made it look bad for Olynyk. Take the bump, yes. Oubre was going to get chucked out anyway. You don't need to fall down like a complete sack of shit. Onto the Washington side of things, Oubre, ejected. Some think that there'll be a suspension coming for him in Game 4. I'm not so sure about it. Didn't throw a punch, didn't throw an elbow, didn't really even hit Olynyk all that hard. Yes, it looks bad when you charge at a player, but in the end, it was as soft as soft. And he could get suspended. I don't believe that he should. It was weak as piss, but I don't think that, it wasn't like he Hassan Whitesided him and charged from behind and threw an elbow into the back of his head. He ran at a guy looking at him, didn't hit him hard. I have no issue with that being not being a suspension. Will Enrique says, Kelly Olynyk is a garbage player. Why else is he there to bully MFers? You're joking, yeah? You think that Kelly Olynyk, Brad Stevens says, Kelly, can you go in there and bully people? Really? You think that that's what... They get the tall, skinny, white guy to go in there and go, man, can you just go mix things up and bully people? Will, sorry, mate. That's laughable. That Olynyk is the goon. Come on, man. You're joking, yeah? Anyway, Boston, Washington side of things. Otto Porter was great. They really took advantage of him when he was when Isaiah Thomas switched onto him. 19 and 8 with 3 steals in 38 minutes for Otto, on 62% shooting, and they used him a little bit more. Still can't crack that 20% usage, but getting a few more shots and really took advantage of it. While Jan Mahinmi returned to action finally. Only played the 10 minutes and had 2 points with 2 blocks, and Marcin Gortat played 31. But expect those Mahinmi minutes to rise, maybe when we get to Game 5. We see 15, 16 out of Mahinmi, and we see Gortat come down from the 37. He already down to 30, 31, but down to maybe 28, 27, and Mahinmi getting those minutes, and Jason Smith really being eliminated. Now, Smith played only 7 minutes here, so expect that to keep on going. Bogdanovic, big minutes, 29 minutes after playing just 8 in the last game, 19 and 10 with 4 triples in 29 minutes for Bojan there. He's just as likely to do nothing in the next game. That was a huge performance, but we know what his output is. It's very up and down. It changes from game to game. While Bradley Beal started off well and ended up being bad. 11 points in 26 minutes. But for as much as I've talked about this game, there's not a lot to talk about because it was a blowout, so minutes were all over the place. Will chimes back in. They have no other tough guy. Marcus Smart's the toughest guy on their team. Amir Johnson is a tough guy. Kelly Olynyk is not a tough guy. That's simple as that. Sharif Ali, Jay Crowder, he is more of a tough guy than Kelly Olynyk. All these guys are Tyler Zeller, I would say, is more of a tough guy than Kelly Olynyk. If you wanted to throw an enforcer in there, Tyler Zeller is more of that guy than Olynyk. And you obviously don't think he's a good player, and you think that's the only reason he plays. I could not disagree more. To me, Olynyk is more of a finesse player than a brute force player, than a guy goes in there to throw punches. I do not see that at all. If you can show me evidence of that outside of the Kevin Love arm grab, by all means, show me where all his dirty plays that he goes out there and puts out, because I just do not see that whatsoever. Let's move on to the second game, and that was Utah Golden State. The Warriors got off to a hot start as per usual. The Jazz, though, did well to keep it close. It ended up being a 115-104, so an 11-point victory to the Warriors, but the Jazz did get it back a little bit closer. Got it to single digits a couple of times, but they just never looked likely. Rudy Gobert, 16 and 16 with a steal and a block. He was good. Gordo Hayward was fantastic. 33, 5 and 4 in 40 minutes. And with Georgie Hill out with a sore toe, there's got to be more to that. He's got to have ligament tears in that toe. There's no doubt about that. Utah Jazz does a terrible job of making their athletes look bad with their medical reports. Knee soreness day to day, then the guy misses 3 weeks. Oh, if he's just sore, get out there and play. It's the way the Jazz report these injuries that leads to people having these sort of visceral negative reactions, and putting out George Hill's sore toe. I've got a sore toe, stubbed it against the table. Oh, what's he got? Ingrown toenail? There's no way that it's anything like that. But that's the impression that these medical reports give, and Utah press release team has come under fire for that, and I think it needs to change because it puts unnecessary pressure and scorn onto their athletes, and it's not great. Shelvin Mack started. He was good again. 14, 3 and 4 with 2 steals and 3 triples in 31 minutes. If he has to go again for Game 3, then he's going to be a useful DFS target. No other player apart from Gobert, Mack, and Hayward scored in double digits for the Jazz. Derek Favors struggled again, 11 minutes. This is the last time I'm going to say it. He is a backup center at this point for this team, and he's getting no other minutes. That is it. Rocket Rodney Hood played 35, a big run for him. Had 8 points, really, really struggling so far this season. And Jingle and Joe didn't have the best of nights. 21 minutes for Joe, 3 and 4. He guarded Steph a bit, but yeah, honestly, it wasn't a great performance there. On to the Warriors. The Jazz had 3 double fidget. speaking of fidget spinners, my son's gone, can you get me some fidget spinners off eBay? Like, what are they? Oh, there's these metal things that spin around. Cool. I've ordered them. This is the new thing to take over the world, apparently, fidget spinners. I sound like such an old dad at the moment. The Jazz had 3 blokes in double figures. The Warriors had 3 guys over 20. Draymond 21, Durant 25, Steph Curry 23, Clay 14, Andre Iguodala 10. Big performances from all their studs, the big 4 guys there. Draymond had 21, 7 and 6, went down with a knee injury, came back in about 2 minutes later, so he looks like he's fine. Durant 25, 11 and 7, and Steph had 23, 4 and 7, and even Klay Thompson dished out 6 assists. 14, 6 and 6. Dave West couldn't back up the 8 assist game from game 1. Had 0, in fact, in this one, but still a decent performance. 4 and 7 with a steal and a block. And Zaza Pachulia played the first 9 minutes and then did not come back into the game at all. Yeah, not much else to really talk about. They did empty the bench here. Matty Barnes got in. Pat McCaw played 2 minutes. The game was under control for the majority of this for the Warriors. So for games where there wasn't much to talk about in terms of closeness or battles, I managed to go 20 minutes while talking about it. Such is the way things go when you have verbal diarrhea. Let's move on to previewing Friday's 2 games. The first one of those is Cleveland, and actually, before I do that, Will says, hey man, I admit, I just don't like the guy. No argument necessary. Love the vids. Cheers. Mate, I'm totally fine, mate. I understand that people just don't like him. And the reason I mentioned that, Will, and I wasn't trying to single you out, and I do apologize for singling you out, is that people have these reactions, and the main reason is for some reason they just don't like him. But when you go to look at what's the evidence, there is none. I just don't like him, so therefore he's dirty. And I just try to put these things out there to just don't jump in with, fucking Linux doing this, as so many people were doing all over the place. And I just like to go, hey, it's probably a little unfair if there's no actual evidence of this, and it's just far from true. So, Will, sorry, mate, sorry for singling you out. But that was my whole point in all of that. All right, Cleveland, Toronto. Can we get a game that's close? Maybe. The Cavs are favored by only 3 here in Toronto. The total is 214.5, and we've got both these games got a really similar total. 214.5 for Toronto, Cleveland, 215.5 for San Antonio and Houston. The big injury that we need to pay attention to, of course, is Kyle Lowry. He had that ankle problem, went to the rooms, came back, didn't finish the game, and then is having some real issues at practice on Thursday today. So don't be stunned if either Lowry can't go or he's very limited when he plays. So we're on full alert now. This is the first game of the night, so we're going to be able to know in advance whether Lowry is in and whether that opens up Corey Joseph as being a good option, which of course it will if Lowry doesn't play. So that's the one we really target. It also boosts a guy like DeMar DeRozan, and I think it does boost Serge Ibaka a little bit as well. And probably Norm Powell gets somewhat of a boost with some usage increase also, assuming they continue to start him, which I do believe that they will, because we remember Corey Joseph plays a little bit of the minutes at the 2, so Powell will start, and he'll also get a few more minutes at the 2 there as well, in that backup role that Joseph normally holds. Point guards. Lowry, if he plays 8,400, a hobbled Kyle Lowry who hasn't really gotten anywhere close to reaching that value recently, I can't say that it's a good investment. You've got other point guards around here like Kyrie Irving that you can take a swing at. But again, as we talk about so often, big money point guards is often the way to go. But here we have got Kawhi, we have got Jim Harden, we have got LeBron. So in a situation where Lowry is likely to be limited, I'm not sure that spending up on him, that 8,400, is going to be the best way to go about it. On DraftKings is at 7.4, so that becomes a sneaky GPP option. I think I would really like that in GPP, assuming he plays, of course. 7,400 is super cheap for Lowry, and he can easily back at home, even if he's a little bit hobbled, that's the word. I think that he can. I think he can bring that value back pretty comfortably. As for Kyrie, he is at 9,100 on FanDuel. He's got a 40-point average over the last 3. So game 4 against Indiana and the last 2 here against Toronto. It's not quite where it needs to be for a 9,100 player, but we saw today the perfect lineup on FanDuel was under 300 points, given the way that they are pricing up their players. So Kyrie at that salary is not bad. He's at 83 on DraftKings, and I feel pretty good about him on DraftKings at 8,300. The other point guards, Darren Williams at 2,500, didn't have the greatest game in Game 2, but still put up 11 points, which at 2,500 is not a complete undersell. So he is worth a look also if you're going to go cheap at point guard. But of course, the one we're really going to look at is Corey Joseph if Lowry is out. He is at 3,300. He had 33 points in Game 2. I would be cautious about using him if Lowry plays, although there is some merit behind it, because if Lowry struggles or is limited, then Joseph's going to get some extra playing time. But you smash the shit out of that if Lowry is out. In cash, you cannot avoid, I don't think, using Corey Joseph if Kyle Lowry happens to be out at 3,300. He's at 37 on DraftKings as well. There is some decent value in him if Lowry plays, maybe, but if Lowry's out, we go for that. Delon Wright at 3,100. Would have loved to have seen that at about 2,000, but at 3,100, I'm not really sure. I'm feeling that for Delon. At 2,000 on DraftKings, Lowry out, 2,000 for Delon. Yep, that's worth a look to me. That's a real GPP upside sort of a play there. At shooting guard, I love Norm Powell at 4,300. I assume that he starts, and if Lowry is out, I do really like that at 4,300. He had 18 points in Game 2. He does struggle defensively against LeBron, but I think he gets some extra minutes if Kyle sits, and at 4,300, he's got a chance to beat that. If Lowry is in, I would find it harder to use Norm at that sort of a salary point. He's down to 4,600 on DraftKings as well, and he was up at like 5,400. So that becomes a much better situation for him over there as well. So 4,600 for Norm, no problems going with there. Now DeMar DeRozan, King Shithouse, he has been terrible. He is down to 7,900 at home, potentially no Lowry. He's not going to be this bad for every game. I feel pretty good about going back to DeRozan at 7,900, 8,000 on DraftKings. It could bite me not only on the ass, but right on the dick as well. That's how aggressive it could be in terms of coming back to haunt me. But at 7,900, 8,000 bucks, really, it's a pretty good value for DeRozan, especially if Kyle has to sit. J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, Kyle Korver, the three shooting guards in Cleveland, none of those guys stand out. If you want to take one in a punt situation in a tournament, it's Smith. He's got that ability to get hot, but realistically, he is concentrating pretty much on defense only. He's doing nothing on offense. He is just doing it defensively, and that doesn't translate into DFS scoring. At small forward, PJ Tucker at 3,100. He's doing nothing. 6 points in the last game. Had a nice game one, which was a fluky game one, but it was still a nice performance. I don't really like him too much there. Well, LeBron is at 12.8. Yeah, it's a pretty good use of 12.8. I think you're getting 55 out of LeBron almost without him breaking a sweat. At 12.4 on DraftKings, a really solid high-price guy to look at. DeMarie Carroll is the opposite of that. For some reason, DeMarie Carroll scored 6 points in the last game, and that's not 6 real-life points. It is 6.7 FanDuel points, and FanDuel's one. You know what? I'm feeling a DeMarie Carroll breakout. He's at 4,200. You know what I think? Cool. What are you talking about? He's been terrible for 2 years. 4,200 for DeMarie. No. Look, maybe they're assuming, okay, he takes some usage away from Kyle Lowry. He'll probably take the usage. He'll probably miss all the shots, but he might take some of that usage. I think majority goes to Norm rather than DeMarie. So 4,200. Sorry, mate. I don't think that's going to happen. Sharif Ali says, would it be an option to just fade Toronto guards in GPPs? Yes. It would be. Joseph's going to have high ownership if Lowry is out. He is going to have high ownership. So in GPPs, it's probably not going to be the greatest option. But can you afford to make up the ground of a guy who could be comfortably, easily 10x? That's the thing. Oh, you fade, everyone's got him. But then you have to get 10x. And yes, he could shit the bed. But shitting the bed probably means he gets 16 points, 18 points at 3,100, which is still phenomenal value. So I would be a little bit hesitant, even though everyone's going to have him. I'd just rather go, let's bank that, let's find some differentiation somewhere else, because I think the odds of him being a 2x player, a 3x failure, is really, 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 really low. And I would do it if I had multiple GPP entries in. But if I'm going single entry, one lineup, I don't think that would be it's well down on the percentage chance of you getting the best lineup by doing that. I think anyway, it's really low odds. Power forward, Serge Ibaka, I think he gets a big bump if Lowry is out. So he's at 6,100. Didn't have the greatest game 1 or game 2, but I'm here for Ibaka getting 30 here. I think that's a good spot if Lowry is out. As for Kevin Love at 7,500, I'll take Ibaka every day of the week in that situation. Love is down to 7,000 on DraftKings, so that's getting a little bit more palatable, but he hasn't really been pushing those numbers much. And I look at it saying, well, I don't have faith in him getting to that, and I don't have faith in him having a huger ceiling than that. So that sort of eliminated him from cash and from tournament. So that takes him out of a lot of consideration. Channing Frye was great in the last one, dropped 26 at $4,000. Great stuff. Now, if they continue to put Jonas Valanciunas on him, that could continue to allow Frye to do that. So I like him as a GPP guy, but I don't like him as much more than that, while Pat Patterson has just been a good player, but a horrendous fantasy option for the entirety of his career, and I don't imagine that swinging here. Valanciunas was brilliant in the last game, had 29 points at 4,900, but for him to continue to shoot at 80%, I think is probably an unrealistic expectation, and that makes him hard to use, especially given the fact that if they're going to come off the bench with him and he doesn't shoot that high percentage, he just won't play. And that's going to be the issue. 5,700 for Tristan Thompson, no real high upside there, but more of a cash game play, I believe, for Tristan. Let's move on to the next game, which is San Antonio and Houston. The Rockets are favored by 4.5. The total here is 215.5. The series is tied 1-1 after 2 blowouts, one going each way. Obviously, if the series is tied, Tone Parker is out for the season. Not a torn ACL, so that is good news, but a torn tendon in his quadriceps is going to leave him sidelined. And you'd imagine that he will struggle to be ready for the start of the season, but he's definitely out for the playoffs. So that is going to put Pat Mills in there. And we talk about using high-priced point guards. But I think on this slate, with the value of Kawhi, with LeBron, with Harden, and then with Lowry being out, you could run, or potentially being out, you could run a Joseph Mills backcourt and Pat Mills, and it costs under $7,000. And then you could run a Kawhi, LeBron, Harden combination. That looks pretty good to me, for cash especially. Pat Mills is at 3,800. I imagine he plays 30-plus minutes. In the regular season, on the times that Parker was out, we'd see DeJounte Murray play 22 and Mills play like 26. I'd be stunned if Pop went to that minutes distribution. He might start Murray. There's no way, in my mind, that DeJounte Murray is getting 20-plus minutes, unless it's a 50-point smacking in one direction. Like Murray a lot. I don't think that that's happening. So I reckon you're getting 30 plus of Millsy, you're getting 10-ish of Murray around that zone, and you're getting some no point guard lineups with Kawhi and Manu handling it for a couple of minutes at a time. So 3,800 for Millsy, really, really decent option there. Yeah, he hasn't done great stuff. In the last 3 games, he's at 10 points a game. That's not ideal. But given the extra role with him here, given the extra minutes that he should see, I think he's a fairly good chance to exceed value there. As for Murray at 1,500, you could do a lot worse than take a flyer on that, throw him in there, and see what you get. 1,500, 7 points, you're done. There's your value right there, and that's a cheeky way to get it, but it is more of a tournament sort of a look. I would be stunned if he gets no minutes at all, but it's Pop, man. Things can happen. As for Pat Bev, he is at 5,300. I'm either going big on Kyrie, or I'm going cheap on Joseph, Mills, maybe Murray. I don't really see the value there at Beverly at 5,300 really at all. And if we look over on DraftKings, Mills is at 44, so they have bumped him a bit. There's still a little bit of value in there, and I think he's usable. While DeJounte Murray's at 3,000, I don't really see much of that with him. Ryan O'Neill says Patty Mills is 5,900 on money, but Jesus, Moneyball's gone sick. Yeah, that's pushing that a little bit high. Now, Moneyball uses the same scoring system as FanDuel, so you're talking about a guy, Pat Mills, his highest score in the last 5 is just 24 points, and yeah, 5,900. You need 30 out of him. I don't like that. So if you guys in Australia are playing Moneyball, I wouldn't be falling all over myself to get Mills at that sort of an extended salary. Shooting guards, Jim Harden, 12,200 on FanDuel. It still feels a little high now. He is at home, but I don't like spending 12,000 on Harden there. I like 10.9 on DraftKings. I think that's a fine price to spend on him, and I would be happy with that. But If I am struggling with cash, it's Kawhi and LeBron that get that cash for me on FanDuel rather than Harden. He is probably due a game, but we've seen his game be reduced to a degree in the playoffs with that bullshit foul stuff not being paid quite as often, and that does reduce his output. So 12-2 for Jim is probably just a little bit too high. Manu's at 2,800. No problem with getting Manu in there. He had 17 in the last game. I think he gets an extra couple of minutes from Parker. He gets more ball handling duty. He gets more assists. I like him at 2,800. And who else we got? Dan Green at 3,800. I don't think this changes much for Green with Parker out. I don't think he's got much upside to be a great GPP guy, and I'm not sure he's got great floor to be a cash player, but he would be all right, but I'm not feeling great about that. Eric Gordon and Lou Williams, the other two guys. Williams was disgusting in the last game, but he is a solid GPP option that I think will be low owned, especially after he had 2 points in game 2. I think he'll be better than that, but he's only a GPP guy, while big Eric Gordon comes in at $5,000. I'll take Lou over that, but if I'm looking for a cash guy, I don't hate Gordon at 5,000, but it still doesn't feel like the strongest play to me. Small forwards, John Simmons, 1,700. I think Simmons gets more minutes, 1,700. I feel really good about that. Now, the problem is on FanDuel is he's a small forward, and LeBron and Kawhi are a small forward. So that might look great, and you can look at our projections and go, oh, look, we're projecting him for over 6x value. That is true, but it also means that you can't play both Kawhi and LeBron. And that is a concern. So it's not always just about, I've got to have this guy in, and that takes away your value there. That means you've got all this extra cash to spend, and where do you throw it? Do you throw the 9,000 on Kawhi? Do you throw the 12-2 on Jim, which might not give you the best overall return? Whereas you might be able to put Simmons away, go big at small forward, and use Mills and Joseph as your point guards and get an overall bigger return. And those guys might give you 5.5x, 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 rather than Simmons giving you 7 and everyone else giving you 3 or 3.5 or 4. And it's all about balancing how that all works together. But yeah, Simmons at 1,700 definitely has appeal if you want to start looking at setting up lineups that way. Now, on DraftKings at 2,700, it is less appealing, but it is still pretty appealing, and he's got the flexibility of having shooting guard, small forward eligibility, plus the positional flexibility that DraftKings give you by having a guard forward and a utility spot. So you could slot him in if you're looking for someone at 2,700. I think we're going to see a little bit more John Simmons in this game than what we've seen. Kawhi, 11,100. Fine. Yep, love it. You're getting 50 out of Kawhi pretty much every game. 10-8 on DraftKings. What more is there to say about Leonard? He's been ludicrous. And Trevor Ariza, great game 1, terrible game 2. Basically a microcosm of what the Rockets did. He's at 5,200. I would look at him as a GPP guy and nothing more. He has been flaky at best in the playoffs. At power forward, LaMarcus Aldridge, speaking of flaky at best, he's down to 6-7 on FanDuel. At some point, he's going to put something out there, but I have no trust in him in cash at all. Not a single element of trust I have in LaMarcus Aldridge's game. I would look at him as a GPP guy. That's it. He's down to 6-2 on DraftKings. Again, it sounds awesome, but he's been shit. There's no sugarcoating that. Ryan Anderson, 4,700. 2 really strong games for Rhino in the series so far. 4,700. I don't trust him in cash. Do you? Do you expect him to continue to shoot like 8 for 8 like he did in the start of that game 2 and as hot as he was in game 1? Or as Skip Bayless likes to say, the bloke reminding me the most of Michael Jordan is Ryan Anderson, because Skip, you've obviously never watched a single basketball game in your entire life, so shout out to you for being a cock who gets paid millions of dollars a year. I wish I could be that much of a cock and get paid millions of dollars a year. 4,700 for Rhino is a GPP option only. Dave Lee at 3,200. Yes, it came unstuck. 11 minutes, 9 points. Cool. Let's just leave it at that for Dave. He shouldn't be playing big minutes, and I don't think that he will. Centers. Powell. Brilliant performance from Powell in the last one. 4,900. I have no problem with going back to Powell. It worked. It might not work again, but I like what he did. No problem at that salary. 53 on DraftKings. Let's go for it. Clint Capella at 62. Way too high. Love Capella, but that's too high. 5,100 on DraftKings. I cash that in. That is very, very cashy to me for Clint over on DraftKings. The Undertaker. I still remained absolutely stunned that Dwayne Dedman is out of the rotation in San Antonio. This guy started. He lost the starting job because of illness. Not because of bad form, because of illness. David Lee replaced him. He never got back in. and he screams as the best option. Now, Gasol played well in game 2. I don't think that continues every single game. So maybe we see some Dwayne. And you know what? Even in the last game where I was thinking, hey, maybe he plays 15 minutes and smashes through that $2,000 value and then played 4 minutes in junk time only, he still gave you over 3.5x value in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. If he can get 15 minutes, he is smashing through that value. I just have no faith in Popovich doing that whatsoever. Nene. 4,800 for Nene on FanDuel. He hasn't been that successful against the Spurs. I'm not really feeling much there. But 3,900 on DraftKings, I'm a little bit intrigued with what Nene can do there. Obviously, he got ejected in the last game. Still had 14 points in 18 minutes. So at 3,900 for Nene, I'm okay with that as being an option for him. So consider him without being fully committed to Mr. Hilario. All right. I think we're done. See any other comments came in. Will says, yes, Powell is my go-to. I think he's a good option. I think that Capella on DraftKings is a solid center option as well. I think they're the two centers you want to go for rather than Thompson and Valanciunas in the Cleveland-Toronto game. We're done. If you want to support the show, if you enjoy the show, head to patreon.com/redrock_bball. It's $3 a month to become a supporter. And again, the show is going to continue to remain free. So there's no worries. You're going to get your free content. You're going to get, you've already gotten almost 900 episodes of this show already. But if you can sacrifice one coffee a month and you want to support independent broadcasters like myself, patreon.com/redrock_bball. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, on Google Play, on TuneIn and Stitcher, and leave a review. It's a great way of helping. And of course, don't forget Mum by going to lordtimepieces.com and use that promo code LOFantasy to get 10% off and free shipping worldwide. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Brad Stevens.